Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. Welcome to Dubai Municipality's first edition of its annual Digital Forum. When we invited all of you to join us today, we informed you that we would be speaking about transformations underway for the UAE and Dubai's digital future, that we would discuss the latest trends and solutions and get in-depth insights from local and international experts in the digital space. But we are here to discuss more than that. There was a great story I heard about President Kennedy during his first visit to the NASA headquarters. He came across a janitor mopping the floor and asked him what he was doing. To his surprise, the janitor replied, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." This story has been widely used as an anecdote for different scenarios, but I see it as a great example for a clear vision, a vision that transcends beyond those at the top, one that trickles down and inspires action across the board. With our visionary leadership, this is what happened. They had a transformational vision that has helped the UAE reach where it is today. And their persistent ambition lingers in all of us at the government sector and, of course, all of us at Dubai Municipality. So in line with our leadership vision for today and the future, at the heart of everything we do as a government entity is our service to the public. And while Dubai is gearing up for 2040, that is unlike anything any of us have ever imagined for this former desert land, we see the role of technology becoming ever more crucial for happiness, quality of life, and of all our residents and visitors. Over the years, technology has also become a primary contributor to maintaining sustainability of our environment and infrastructure. And last year, we saw a technology side by side with us, helping with the battle against a global pandemic across all sectors in the UAE. For us at Dubai Municipality, we have embarked on a journey of managing a digital city that makes Dubai the smartest and happiest city on earth. As such, today, we are going to share our experience and take you through our digital strategy, which is primarily focused on user experience and digital transformation in the government sector. Also, with the help of international subject experts joining us today, we will explore global best practices in intelligent enterprises, digital operations, and customer happiness, while getting insights from real-life examples and case studies. I trust that you will find today's discussion not only educational and insightful, but also inspiring. And I invite you all to participate and make this a truly engaging discussion. Without further ado, I would like to invite Director General of Dubai Municipality, His Excellency Dawood Al-Hajari, to deliver the keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. Digital government is certainly not a new concept for all of us here. Over the last few years, it's fair to say that our government has carried through the wave of computerization in a bid to deliver improved opportunities to citizens and residents across all our government departments. Furthermore, pandemic has taken a toll on communities across the globe. However, the crisis have provided us with a stark reminder of the importance of trusted digital infrastructure that is accessible to all. In response to the opportunities that this can bring, Dubai Municipality has developed a well-defined digital strategy which will enable us to advance our digital agenda. More specifically, our strategy looks to answer three key questions. How should Dubai Municipality evolve to provide cutting-edge services in an increasingly digital world? How can Dubai Municipality increase operational efficiency through digital capabilities? How must Dubai Municipality's technological landscape evolve to support their digital aspirations? Our goal is to build a digital-first Dubai municipality by leveraging technological innovation to develop of a happy and sustainable city. As part of today's event, we would like to introduce you to our new digital strategy. This morning's session will cover a range of topics with participants who will speak of the technological innovation in the municipal sector. To close and drive forward our digital agenda, I ask all of you to focus on the following within your respective section. Build a digitally trained workforce by addressing the skills gap. Foster a culture of innovation across sectors. Establish consistent process to digitally operate and focus on service values. Empower teams with shared ownership and acceleration decision making. Explore, evaluate, and implement technology platforms to build a strong foundation tech layer that it is adaptable to current business requirements and the vision. Build a partnership ecosystem with a range of entities that accelerates the digital strategy. Thanking you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your kind words. As I mentioned earlier, at Dubai Municipality, we have developed a digital strategy for the future needs and aspirations of the city. And who is better to give you an overview of our experience than Dubai Municipality's digital team leader herself? Please join me in welcoming Ms. Esmahan Al-Zar'ouni, the Director of IT at Dubai Municipality, to present the digital strategy of Dubai Municipality and the journey we have mapped out ahead.
Dear all, good morning and thank you for joining this session. And thank you to our Director General for his opening note. As alluded to previously, digital technology is undoubtedly transforming all aspects of our lives and impacting a wide-ranging number of industries, including but not limited to healthcare, transport, retail and manufacturing, and entertainment. On a more personal level, technology has significantly altered the way in which many of us connect with our friends and family, and the way in which we want to consume everyday services, especially during this period of time. Over the last few years, many of us have been discussing that technological change has been accelerating at an unprecedented rate. Yet, COVID has certainly sped this up even more, and exponential advances being made in a suite of technologies ranging from computing power to data storage capabilities to the scale and performance of the internet may soon create a tipping point. I mean, moments at which technologies such as robotics and AI, as an example, become much more significant and meaningful. Importantly, all of this change could create a world we can barely begin to imagine. As we move forward, it's therefore of critical importance that we therefore stay abreast of key technology changes taking place and try and fundamentally understand how we can leverage these changes to transform the lives of our citizens and residents in a ways we may not have thought possible previously. To our advantage, of course, is that we are a nation of innovators, a nation of entrepreneurs, and our tech industry, if already very strong. Now, let's discuss a little bit more about our digital strategy, which have been working on over the last couple of months. Our digital strategy has been designed to ensure that the benefits of digital are spread throughout the city, that we have the necessary infrastructure, technological foundations supported by policies, and that everyone has the skills they need to be citizens in the digital age and workers in the digital economy. So, let me take you through our vision and how, working together with the sector, we will achieve it together. Our digital strategy is built on 3 pillars: customer happiness, that we will use digital and emerging technologies to improve our customer centricity and thereby contribute to the country's happiness agenda. Digital operations, that we will use digital and emerging technologies to transform the delivery of our core sector operations. Intelligent enterprise, that we will use digital and emerging technologies to improve the efficiency of our operational systems and internal processes. As a final note, to accelerate innovation and implement the vision that we set out in the digital strategy, 7 key programs will be initiated on which the development efforts will be jointly undertaken by the department and the private sector. These programs include the below: digital operating model to help build a tech-savvy and digital-skilled workforce by addressing the skill gap. Customer experience, to reimagine the services that we provide to our stakeholders, viz. G2G, G2B, and G2C. Business automation, to digitize and automate all our back-end processes to ensure providing a seamless experience while ensuring maximum efficiency. AI and information management, to ensure data quality and data governance by establishing golden records and artificial intelligence. Elastic infrastructure and security, to implement cloud-ready infrastructure and cyber data security. System of records, to simply and rationalize our enterprise technology landscape, and increase productivity. Finally, city management, to innovate and accelerate our core sector operations, such as GIS, land and building services, sewerage and waste, environment, etc.
Thank you for your excellent speech, Ismahan. I'm sure that the audience found this very insightful, and I'm excited for you all to see how our experience is both similar and different to what others have gone through globally. Let us start with our first expert presentation for today, which will be on the intelligent enterprise. In this session, we will be introduced to enterprise platforms and how new age enterprise platforms are helping organizations be smarter and more efficient. Let us also see what enterprise platforms will have to offer in the near future and what benefits organizations can derive from these platforms. I would like to welcome Mr. John Furr, Industry Advisor at SAP, to talk to us further about this topic.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is John Farr, and I'm an industry advisor at SAP in Dubai. And in my role, I help public sector customers in the UAE and throughout the region transform themselves digitally with SAP software. And that also includes a lot of customers looking to us to help with their ERP solutions. And before I joined SAP, I worked as a management consultant within the public sector in the United States and in Saudi Arabia. And in those roles, I helped many very large public sector customers digitally transform as well. So I've sort of worked from both angles, from the software vendor side, as well as from the management consulting side. And today, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about how municipalities and cities across the world are able to transform themselves with modern ERP solutions, and how those cities and municipalities are increasingly looking at ERP solutions not just as a way to solve their back office challenges, but rather as a way to give them the foundation that they need to really develop innovative solutions to improve the standard of life for citizens of their cities. So if we move on to the first slide, I just want to provide a really quick overview of SAP in the country. So we've been helping to develop ERP solutions for customers in the UAE for over 20 years, and that includes some of the largest entities and most strategically important entities within the country, such as ENOC and ADNOC. So every barrel of oil that those companies pump out of the ground touches an SAP ERP system in some way. Likewise, for all of Etihad's ticket revenue. Also, we've done quite a bit of work with the government of Ras Al Khaimah, with Al Futtaim Group, and many other big household names within the country. So today, when I speak about the challenges that municipalities face with ERPs, these are some of the examples. These are some of the customers that I'm able to draw on when speaking about those experiences. And likewise, SAP has been in business for over 50 years with customers all over the world. And our work within the UAE and throughout the region has been informed by our ERP solutions that we've developed for those customers as well. Next, moving to the next slide, our work with ERP has also been informed by our public sector experience all over the world. So we've helped develop ERP solutions across multiple areas within the public sector all over the world, including many cities and many nations that score very highly on rankings of some of the smartest cities in the world and most innovative cities in the world. And that includes places like Copenhagen in Denmark, Singapore, and the state of Illinois in the US. Okay, so now next slide. When we take a step back and we look at the challenges that municipalities are facing, we see basically these 6 common challenges coming up over and over again all over the world. First, service delivery. So citizens increasingly expect their governments to provide, a a solution similar to what they might get on Amazon or some sort of online marketplace, where you can open up your phone or your app and very quickly and easily request services, report potholes in the road, enroll your children in public schools, things like that. And cities have really tried to do quite a bit more to provide those services to their citizens. Next, when we look at mobility, there's also a tremendous challenge around providing better and more efficient public transit to really enable sort of next generation transportation services. So if I'm a citizen, I can open up an app and I could figure out ways to find the most traffic efficient way to get to work, and whether that's through my car or through public transit, and to try to access all those options in one place. Next, when we look at the citizen experience, cities have also been trying to do more to really listen to and respond to their citizens and to their residents. There's quite a bit of research showing that the more citizens trust their governments, the easier it is for governments to provide high quality services. Because if the citizen trusts the government more, they'll use those services more regularly, and they'll be much more likely to report on problems or challenges that they've had with them, which will then allow the governments to figure out solutions and intervene accordingly. So this has been a big priority for governments at the city and municipality level as well as the federal level. Next, moving on to economic development, municipalities increasingly need to do more with less. So tax revenues are generally lower now due to COVID. Tourism is lower, so there's often less revenue available to municipalities, and that means cities need to be much more conscientious about how they're using their resources. Moving on to sustainable environments, we're all trying to adapt to a lower carbon world now, and cities have really been at the forefront of trying to track their carbon output and to really be seen as places that are prioritizing the future of the globe. And finally, when we look at COVID-19, cities have also been struggling to try to distribute vaccines to their citizens and to their residents, and try to track and trace individuals who might have contacted the disease. And when we look at the responses that cities have come up with to try to respond to each of these challenges, we see that modern ERP solutions are often at the foundation of a lot of these answers. So for example, when we look at service delivery, it's much easier for a municipality to do this when they're using a modern ERP system, which provides a single digital identity to all of their citizens. So a city can look at a history of all of that citizens' touch points and interactions with their government. When we look at mobility solutions, likewise, cities are able to use modern ERPs to put all of their data in one place to, for example, forecast traffic, forecast the usage of public transit, and they're often able to use that data to develop revenue streams in new ways and to find new ways to monetize their transport options. When we look at the citizen experience, again, with a modern ERP solution, it's much easier to collect feedback from those citizens across any touch point and across any device that they might have. When we look at economic development, modern ERPs make it much easier for cities to manage their budgets and to forecast their future resource needs much more efficiently by using modern budget forecasting and preparation software. When we look at more sustainable environments, again, if you're using a modern ERP that provides real 360-degree looks at all of your data at one time, it's much easier to take that data and to put it on a dashboard to, for example, monitor pollution output, to monitor carbon output, and to see what is impacting the health and the safety of the citizens within that city. And finally, with COVID-19, we've seen cities do quite a bit more to develop hubs to collaborate, to produce vaccines and to distribute them. And again, that's much easier to do with modern ERPs rather than sort of older solutions or point solutions. So moving on to the next slide. So like I said earlier, ERP is increasingly seen by municipalities as not just something that's used in the back office or something by which the only criterion that we judge it by is sort of a lower total cost of ownership, but rather really smart municipalities increasingly see modern ERPs as solutions that will help drive real serious impacts to improve quality of life for citizens. So for example, if we look at some of the capabilities of modern ERP solutions, those include better long-term reliability for core processes, more flexibility, uninterrupted real-time analytics across all the data that an organization has, a much easier ability to work with big data and extensions to support certain lines of business, to support different needs within the city. And if we look at the impacts that these have in terms of citizen happiness, we see that it's much easier to deliver those services and that critical infrastructure to citizens when a city has all of its data in one place that can be in a place that can be relied upon. It's much easier for administrators to become trusted stewards of public resources. It's also easier to allow people to connect. It's easier to support for cities to support small businesses when they're able to collect and analyze sort of all of their data and all of their information in one place. Moving on to the next slide. So when we look sort of over the course of the past 60 or so years, we see that governments have sort of moved in this evolution to become what we call intelligent enterprises. And by intelligent enterprises, we mean that cities are able to take their employees and have those employees spend their time on more high-value tasks rather than repetitive tasks, which may have relied on a lot of paper-based processes, for example. If we can automate those repetitive tasks and allow employees to work on more value-added tasks, then we can sort of unleash the power of those public sector workers to try to identify better ways of doing business, better ways of generating revenue or saving money. And modern ERP systems are really at the foundation of doing this by allowing us to more easily automate processes and to digitally transform. Moving on to the next slide. So if we look at some examples of modern ERP systems, they generally will allow municipalities to not just manage their finance and HR and procurement, the sort of classic ERP solutions, but rather they can do those things within the context of a much broader network, which provides them with a rather broad suite of solutions. So this example is from SAP's ERP solutions, but frankly, this is something that is quite similar across modern ERP suites. So for example, modern ERPs can give you access to a common business network for procurement, which can help develop more flexible value chains. Experience management, it's much easier to put on top of a modern ERP solutions to collect experience data and to really understand citizen sentiment, which can make it much easier to improve public services. When we look at industry cloud, these are sets of solutions which take best practices that we see in cities across the world and give cities those sorts of line of business extensions they could easily put on top of their ERPs. When we look at the business technology platform, this includes things such as data management and application support. And this is the sort of solution that really allows for cities to make sure that all of their data is in one place, it's harmonized, and that you're removing silos between those different data sets so you can get a common look at all of the data that relates to, for example, a certain type of service that you're providing or for any one of your citizens. And finally, with sustainability management, it's much easier to do things like track pollution, track carbon output, when you're able to look at all of your ERP data in one place. Next, so when we look at some of the limitations in existing ERP systems, there are modern ERPs have done quite a bit to overcome those limitations. So for example, in legacy ERPs, very often you see business processes and analytic capabilities that might align to best practices from 20 years ago, but do not align to the best practices now or what the best practices will be in 5 to 10 years. So modern ERPs are able to offer a much more unified platform that provides a single record for each individual. Also, with legacy systems, you often see a very large data footprint caused by image storage and data duplication. However, modern ERPs are able to provide an in-memory data platform to use data much more efficiently. Legacy ERPs often use more outdated interfaces, which might not have been designed to run with modern analytics solutions. However, modern ERPs are able to use much more modern user interfaces to make it much easier for people who even might not be technical to use the solution easily. Old solutions also generally cannot automate functions easily using cutting-edge technology such as artificial intelligence, whereas modern ERPs will generally give the user the capability to do that right out of the box. Old systems also generally have much more fragmented solutions across multiple IT functions. However, modern ERPs are able to offer an end-to-end lifecycle management to more centrally manage the entire IT landscape. So you're not relying on siloed point solutions. You're able to sort of look at everything at once. Likewise, the existing data model of legacy ERPs often require extensive custom coding and configuration, whereas modern ERP suites have much more simplified configurations so that business end users can much more easily customize and develop specific solutions that they need. So moving on, we also see that modern ERPs can be implemented with a very high degree of flexibility, whether that's on-premise, on any type of infrastructure, or whether it's offered on the cloud as a service. And generally, by moving to cloud, you get a much higher degree of standardization, and it's easier to convert capital expenditures to operating expenditures. However, if you move on-premise, you get more sort of flexibility on your end, the ability to customize in greater detail. Also, many public sector customers perceive on-premise solutions as being more secure. I don't think that's necessarily the case given modern cloud solutions, but that sort of security assurance is a big deal, especially with many security and defense organizations. And modern ERPs will also give you the capability to roll out the solution, if it's on cloud, on many different types of platforms through many different infrastructure providers, such as Google, Microsoft AWS, or Mora, the local solution. Okay, so moving on now, I want to take a look at how modern cities, modern municipalities are able to use their ERP suites, their new ERP suites, to overcome some of their greatest challenges. And I broke this down to 3 separate use cases: asset management, leveraging data as an asset, and improving citizen services. And the cities that I selected here for these case studies are all cities that generally score pretty highly on rankings of things like smart cities, or cities that have been able to most easily achieve some of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So first, when we look at intelligent asset management, when we think of the assets that a municipality might have, those might include trucks, utilities, heavy machinery, heavy equipment, and a modern ERP makes it much easier to maintain those assets in a way that we really couldn't before. So for example, Internet of Things technology allows us to use sensors implanted in a utility, for example, to really predict when that utility might need to be maintained, resulting in a much more efficient use of that asset. Artificial intelligence and machine learning likewise makes it much easier to automate our entire asset management lifecycle. And we could also use things like real-time engineering and simulation and 3D visualization to give us better awareness of what's going on within a given asset, and to predict what might happen within that asset. So going to the next slide, when we look at how assets have generally been maintained, traditionally, assets have often been maintained using what's called preventative maintenance. So a work crew, for example, might go out and inspect a utility, once every 6 months, or based on some amount of time. However, now more cutting-edge cities are able to use what's called predictive maintenance to manage their assets in a much more efficient way. So instead of sending out a work crew once every couple of months, you're able to implant Internet of Things sensors into that asset to monitor its health, to monitor the frequency that it's been used. And that means we only need to send out a work crew when we need to, not when it's unnecessary. And likewise, we can also much more easily get in front of problems. So, for example, if those Internet of Things sensors are predicting, or rather are monitoring the asset in real time, then we could see if that asset needs to be maintained perhaps earlier than we generally would. Okay, so moving on. So when we look at the traditional methods of maintaining assets, again, those tend to be time-bound and based on a certain inspection schedule, whereby a crew will make the inspection and maintenance will be done. But if you have a modern ERP solution, it's much easier to again monitor that asset continuously over time. And using cutting-edge analytics solutions, you can detect anomalies much more easily, do predictive forecasting, and really try to optimize for maintenance strategies for particular assets, rather than using a one-size-fits-all solution. And if we look at a good example of a customer that has made use of modern ERPs to maintain their assets, the city of Copenhagen used recently digital transformation to unify all of its data management capabilities in one place. So Copenhagen wanted to build on its existing strengths to just maintain its position as being one of Europe's leading business hubs. However, the existing technology architecture made it very difficult for them to do that. And by consolidating multiple departments on a single system, they made it much easier to track their asset needs and to get much better data quality. So they now have much better visibility across all of their assets. And Copenhagen really viewed this, again, not just as a way to lower their maintenance costs or lower their asset management costs, but they really viewed this as a sort of foundational solution that they would use to make sure that the city remained a very innovative place to live and to do business. So moving on to the second case study, leveraging data as an asset. So data is probably one of the most important assets that any public sector organization has, and we think about what sort of solutions data can provide us with. It really generally comes to these three buckets. So when it comes to mission and citizen operations, cities are able to use their data to administer taxes much more efficiently, to detect improper payments more easily, and to develop different types of KPIs and dashboards that they can use to monitor what's going on within the city more easily. We move to the second area, internal business operations. When cities are able to put all their data in one place, again, it's much easier to manage finances, HR, and facilities management if you're able to get a real-time 360-degree look at all the data within your organization, and that's much easier to do with a modern ERP system. We look at the third function around policy planning, workforce planning, detecting citizen sentiment. Likewise, when we have a single version of the truth that lets us look at all the touch points that a citizen might have had with the municipality, it's much easier to do this sort of planning. And some of the really all of the most innovative municipalities that you see all over the world are able to do this to some degree by putting all of their data on a single platform, making sure it's harmonized, and making sure that you have just one version of the truth that any employee within the public sector there can use to analyze things. And when we look at how this has sort of happened over time, we see that public sector organizations can use artificial intelligence solutions specifically to help drive changes across these categories, across the customer experience, manufacturing and the supply chain, digital core, people engagement. And a city, for example, might start out by doing things very simply with data intelligence, such as recommending career paths to citizens for a job search hub, or detecting abnormal items within accounting statements. And then as cities sort of move up this curve, they can really roll out even more innovative artificial intelligence solutions to really try to do things like fraud detection, root cause analysis, and sort of smart campaigns where you target marketing campaigns and ideas to your citizens based on the characteristics of those individuals. And when we look at an example of a city that uses a modern ERP solution to really leverage their data much more intelligently, we can look at the Brussels intercommunal transport system. So they manage all the public transit within the city of Brussels. and they had data on over 1 million people per day who are taking thousands and thousands of public transit trips every day. However, Brussels suffered from very poor data transparency, so they had a lot of data, but they didn't necessarily know what to do with it, or it was very hard for them to extract information from that data. However, by using a modern ERP solution, they were able to consolidate all of their data in one place, to remove silos, and to really save time when it comes to IT development tasks and data reporting. And that made it much easier to improve the city's transit infrastructure by forecasting, for example, when a certain subway line will be busier, which might require more in-depth maintenance. It informs the policy planning in terms of figuring out how public transit might be expanded and rolled out in new ways. So this is something that really delivered, very real advantages for the citizens. It wasn't just about lowering total cost of ownership for this one agency. And when we take, and then we move on to the third case study here. This is all about citizen services. So cities have increasingly tried to roll out their citizen services on a single platform that citizens can access. So traditionally, for example, if you're a city resident, you might have to stand online at one office to get one type of permit, or you could call a number to report potholes or other issues with transit infrastructure, and you might have to rely on the mail for other services. Well, with modern ERP solutions, it's much easier to take all of those capabilities, all of those solutions for a citizen, put them into one place. So now citizens can open up their iPad or their laptop or their phone, and in a single platform access everything that they might need from their city or municipality. So this makes it much easier for citizens. It also reduces costs from the municipality when it comes to delivering services, and also allows for personalized services. So cities can target services to certain groups of people who might need it, whether those are elderly people, disabled people, people who are young, renters or homeowners, things like that. And when we look at an example of a city that's using a modern ERP to innovate with citizen services, we can look at Auckland, New Zealand. So Auckland has generally ranked quite highly when it comes to being a place that can deliver a high quality of life for its citizens. And they decided that they wanted to improve things even further by consolidating multiple business applications into one system, so that they were able to get a common look at all the touch points that a citizen has with the city in one place, and to provide a much more consistent way of communicating with citizens, and to track property and rental titles and permits, and to really give those citizens a single digital identity so that they can have the foundation that they need to access Auckland's public services anywhere at any time on any device. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining. My contact information is right here. If you would like to talk more about modern ERP capabilities, then I would love to extend the conversation further. Please send me an email or give me a call, and I'd love to talk more. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Dear attendees, please join us in a 1-minute poll of the session. Thank you, John, for your informative presentation. Now, let us move on to the next one, on digital operations. The presentation in this session will introduce the power and application of IoT and how this emerging technology is disrupting business and operating models. We will also see potential benefits that Dubai Municipality can derive from Internet of Things. I would like to welcome Mr. Christoph Lapinski, IoT Strategy Leader at EY EMEA Advisory Center, to share with us his experience on this topic.
Hi, my name is Christopher Lapinski, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about the digital operations in a smart city. Now, I don't want to talk about, one thing I don't want to talk about is how the future will look like, right? You will hear a lot of consultants, analysts, the vendors, visionaries telling you that by 2030 there will be everything. We will live in a very different world, that we will use AI everywhere, we will have augmented reality, robots will be moving around us, so everything will be dominated by technologies, and there's a lot of imagination, right? You can apply to that. I don't think we're there yet to decide what will happen and when. For sure, we saw that the smartphones, or previously the cellular phones, they changed something because they removed the physical barrier between a person and location and the possibility to communicate, right? You no longer have to tell someone to be there at home at 12 because I'm going to call them. So some technologies or some capabilities, they remove certain barriers related to communication, location, distance, etc. The cloud environments, they enabled our use of computing power and accessibility to different resources, digital resources everywhere. And we see a lot of capabilities here and there. Some of them are mature enough to be implemented in real life world, in real world. The others, they might require some additional work. So I don't think anyone can assume what will happen in the next 10 years. But we know one thing for sure. We know that we will be even more interconnected, right? So with the cellular phones, we got connected, we could call each other, we could actually speed up communication and have direct communication to anyone. With the cloud, we could actually use our digital resources, right? With the transformation of public transportation, we could actually, well, close the globe. We can easily travel across different continents in a very short time and do businesses there, right? So we will be more and more interconnected, and that's also because the technologies we own or technologies we deploy, they have more and more capabilities to share or consume data. Now, if we think about the digital operations of the city, what does it mean that we become interconnected, and what's going to happen? I'll refer to to an example of one of our clients. It's a huge enterprise, and they own a number of campuses around the globe. So campuses are miniaturized cities, self-sufficient, but managed by a single entity. So there's a difference compared to cities. You don't have to deal with a lot of stakeholders if you want to decide on implementation of something or transformation of an aspect of operations of the city. But they have similar problems as any other city, because most of the technologies of the digital layer that is used on the physical layer is provided by the manufacturer, right? So the solar panels, the elevators, the door, the air conditioning or air purification, all those systems, they come with digital capability, but the capability is developed and provided by the manufacturer of the physical equipment. So when they ask us, how can we improve the operations of our campuses? We had to realize that there are obstacles in terms of automation of operations. And we figured out that the only way in their case was to create a platform of platforms, right? So yet another layer, digital layer, a platform that would connect and interact with different closed or isolated ecosystems that are there. So that's one thing, how to do this in terms of features or functionalities or type of systems used. But then you have to think about how to answer the question, why do you do that, right? So why do you need an improvement of operations and how to get there? So if you think about all the readings you might get, all the systems that are connected, and how you work on the data, you might see that it's like you want to sense something, right? You need to recognize the reading, so you need to understand the temperature. Is it from the office building outside, or is it a machine? Where do I get this reading? you need to understand the context of the reading, right? Is it a good value, 25 degrees? Is it a good value or not? And should I do anything because I received this sort of a reading, right? So then you learn how to react and you master your reaction. So once you decide that the temperature is too high and there has to be something changed, right? Lower voltage, lower pressure or higher pressure somewhere, you get another reading. You see if the environment or the operations of whatever provided the reading, if it's changed and it's what you might expect as a change. So you made a good reaction or a bad reaction. So you learn, and this if you think about this, you sense, recognize, you understand, react, and learn. It's a learning path. It's the learning path of a future city, right? You sense, grasp, feel, then you notice, recognize, you classify what you sensed, you understand or anticipate, right? So there are basic models or reference numbers that you have to build your decisions on depending on the reading, and then you react and learn about the reaction. So it's a more advanced type of operations that is enabled with the digital capacity. And yes, this is very close to what we can call a human-like receptivity with IoT. So you have all the senses, you have sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, right? That give you different type of information. And obviously we can compare this to the sight, for example, is what you get, the sort of readings that you receive. And you can rely on the hearing is the voice of the people, right? So what do citizens do? What do the citizens tell you about your operations? Then there's the smell, a very interesting one, because it's something you cannot touch, you cannot feel, you cannot see, right? But it's there. It's an additional dimension of understanding, right? You can see something, but then the smell gives you something more. In the digital world, the IoT world, we call this a digital echo quite frequently. So it's not a direct reading. It's something that is left after two objects or two machineries or two ecosystems reacted. They had a transaction that left a trace. So if you analyze the trace, the digital echo, the send of it, you can learn a lot about how the systems are connected together, how much they rely on each other, or what is any other system that affects them and makes them work maybe not as you might want the systems to be working. And of course you have the spinal cord and the nervous system. So the nervous system connects to all our receptors and transmits the signals through the spinal cord to the brain. And then we have the brain that analyzes the readings and decides if you should do something or not. Right? I'll take your hand off because it's very hot. You're going to burn. Right? So this is the sort of understanding and reaction we might expect from the brain. And of course, we can align this to a model of an architecture of an IoT landscape that is used for digital operations in a city. Right? So the IoT infrastructure. The connected citizens, the connectivity, data ingestion, data management and analytics, service delivery, and of course the immune system. So the safety and security issues, safety and security capabilities that are used in the city to make the whole digital body, digital ecosystem of the city, to make it safe against any attacks, any type of an external and internal threat, right? So there are vendors that try to give you the bits and pieces of those sort of capabilities, but you have to think about the sensors, the capabilities, and the impact on digital operations really as a human-like receptivity. Because there's one thing that will be, and this is something we know for sure, if we're interconnected and if we rely on a lot of inflowing data, and we have to analyze the data to adjust the operations of the city. So there's one thing that has to be developed in order for all of this to work properly. Our brain has a very unique capability to tune our senses, right? I hope you all know that you can see your nose. Try putting your hand below your nose. You see the hand, but you don't see the nose. That's because where we were infants, several months old after our birth, the brain realized that the huge object in the center of our view is probably not a threat. So it learned to avoid this reading. Although it's still in the line of sight, our eyeballs can capture the nose, the brain erases this from what we receive as a reading, right? So we can focus on things that are important, that might bring potential threat. It's the same with the scent, right? When you get attacked by a very bad scent, something smells bad, after a minute or two, you no longer smell this. It doesn't mean that the scent is not there. It just means that it's so obvious it's there, but there's no harm related to this, that your brain says, okay, I'll skip this reading and tune my senses to try to smell something new, okay? I don't want to be overwhelmed with this sort of reading. And this is very important for any digitalization of operations of a city, especially when we consider the physical infrastructure of the city that is combined with digital capabilities, and when we want to introduce a lot of automation and autonomization to the operations of the city. Because what happens if there are issues with the sensors? You might see a sensor failure, for example. It fails to operate. And what then? And if you walk into a city operations center, you might see this quite frequently, that there's a lot of green lights, some yellow lights, and a few red lights. And if you ask the operators about the red lights, they say, yeah, it's a failed sensor, right? It's a failed reading, but we know about this, it's okay, it's going to be red, it has to be red. Well, this shift knows about this. What about the other shift? What about other systems that you would connect and they will receive the sort of bad readings? How would they operate? How would they react to the sort of readings, right? So you need to be able to understand the sensor failure, any spikes and outliers. There's a spike in reading. Is it bad or good? Should we create, an emergency situation because there's a threat, or there's nothing wrong with it because the environment says it's probably a temporary malfunction of a sensor? Drifts, right? Over time, when sensors decalibrate, they might give you different type of readings. You don't see the change in a short time frame, but after several months, you get a constant but different type of reading. Imagine, for example, the pressure, right? You get a reading that the pressure in your water system is going down. So you increase the pressure of the water, right? So you maintain the required pressure. And after several months, the readings, they drift. So they constantly show you that the pressure is going down. So you unintentionally, or your automated pumps and valves, create a higher pressure to respond to the reading. And you get to a very difficult and dangerous situation of a very high pressure in your sewer system, right? So there are a lot of examples from different parts of city operations that say that you have to take care about this sort of reading. So you have to be able to eliminate any false positives, any cycles you might see, or cross correlations of readings that actually don't give you, that are not bringing threat, but that they have to be there for any reason. And obviously we use AI to be able to do something about this, right? To correlate this sort of readings. And even in our organization, in EY, we work on something we call Calibras, calibration as a service. So it's a service that analyzes and identifies different type of malfunctions or issues related to sensors, and helps whoever is operating the environment to determine a threat or adjust the operations depending on the reading. And it starts with very simple things like first setup calibration, right? You have different providers of sensors, and you have to deploy the sensors across the city. And there's the first calibration, so you have to tell them this is 10 seconds, this is 1 kilogram, right? So the first calibration, it has to be there. Then you have to synchronize the readings. So the timestamp of readings, it has to be in the same time. The microstops, for example, in factories, the microstops or misalignment of missynchronization of readings frequently causes, this is what is called the microstops, it frequently causes a very large malfunction of an environment, a major breakdown. You have adjustments, right? So the drifted sensors, they have to be adjusted. Then you have tearing, for example, I get 1 degree. Is it an absolute value or a relative value, right? And then you have any type of different error with the reading, where you have to adapt and you have to decide if the reading is good or not, right? For example, system failures. So you have to ensure system functionality, and this is where AI and this sort of capabilities are actually very important. Now, I think you get this, why being able to tune the sensors and understand what you actually get as a reading from the ecosystem, why is it important for digital operations? But there's one additional aspect of that. We create ecosystems. So it's not only our environment, for example, as a city, or our systems that we have to focus on and control, but it's also all the systems outside that will interact with the city, right? So eventually, an ecosystem of the city will connect to another ecosystem, a transportation system, okay? Autonomous vehicles, car sharing, car rental systems, they will all connect to each other. The cars will start talking to each other. We already see this technology to be deployed. So one car can communicate to another, telling that there's a bump there, there's an issue on the road, adjust your speed, and then you'll have to connect to the ecosystem as well. So for example, you will tell the cars, the network of cars, that there's something wrong around the city, that you actually detected a hazard, or you stand a planned construction works on the road. So the cars have to know this, right? So if we want those systems to rely on each other, the value of data, the quality of data becomes significant, right? Because the value of data you provide determines the quality of a dependent service, right? So being able to provide precise, accurate, and adjusted readings to the ecosystem partners, or to manage and control and deal with any potential bad readings that might affect how you run the city, or how the digital operations and automation works in the city, becomes very, very important. And lastly, it's not only the operations, but also the business relation you create, right? So the value of data and the value of your services, this is something you can evaluate, you can monetize, and you can build a lot on this. And there are different business models enabled with technologies, right? The digitalization itself allowed us to start business models such as pay per use, pay what you want. Then we had the cloud, right? So all type of e-commerce business models, the orchestration, self-service, long tail type of business models were enabled. Then we moved to AI, right? So even further customization, add-ons, auctions, any type of value-added services that are proposed along with your purchases or how you operate. Then we have mobility, right? And mobility not only because we move around, we have our smartphones, so we access different services, but also subscriptions or freemium models. They were non-existent or not used that much before the mobility. Our smartphones and how we use and consume digital media, or how we use the scooters, for example, electric scooters, or rent a car type of services, car sharing services. Through the mobility, we could actually have different type of business models enabled. And then we put IoT on top of this, right? That creates very new landscape of possibilities, Well, first of all of them that rely on data monetization and infrastructure monetization, but also all of them that create the ecosystem and let you control the value networks, right? And the value provisioning with IoT. So all the services that would be dependent on what you provide is very easy to track and analyze the importance of what you provide as a city, as an entity, to a business partner. It's very easy to determine their level of dependency and ask them to enter any type of business relation with them. So how you integrate the value chain and how you integrate the value network through heavily interconnected IoT ecosystems. So all of this, again, is data, right? So you need to be able to control the quality of data and understand all type of readings you receive around. And just to summarize, to close this, the digital operations, it's not something any city can do by itself. So that's why I presented also the third-party perspective, right? The business partners, the business relations you might build. You need to have an ecosystem partner or a number of ecosystem partners that help you as a city to deal with the problems you might see, or bring technologies and capabilities they already have that are very mature to help to allow you to use them as well for your operations. The sustainability, so if you think about the digital layer, how it's growing, so how there's more and more things that are there. You grow capabilities, then you have to secure them. If you secure them, they create limitations, so you have to overcome this, right? So the digital layer becomes more and more important, and it will cost you even more than the physical infrastructure at some point of time. So thinking about the economic sustainability and also the leveraging external partners, business partners in the city, this is a must to be able to actually maintain the quality of services and not to get trapped to some models of the physical infrastructure we might see in more developed countries, like the quality of infrastructure in the US or in several parts of Europe, where there's no money to actually recover or replace the very, very rapidly aging infrastructure, physical infrastructure. So we have to think about this not to get trapped in the digital legacy that would also require yet another amount of money to recover. So all of this, how you create the ecosystem, how you manage the expectations, how you work on sustainability, how you put your requirements to our technologies, how you describe your requirements, and what sort of city support is there to enable digital operations and growth of cities. It's all about credibility, consistency, and trust, right? So cities more and more become business partners to the people, to the residents, to the tourists, to the ecosystem partners. So you have to act not only as a city, but actually as a business partner. Otherwise, well, we saw examples where players like Airbnb or Booking.com, they actually change the whole landscape of tourism in a city, right? So it's either you as a city that have control on everything and become a partner and enable transformation through business partners, or is the business partners that will find a way with digitalization to actually perform the business there. And the question is how much of the power will still remain in the hands of city authorities. So I think there's a very interesting future ahead of us, and the digital operations is one of the most engaging topics for the future. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope this is something that makes me think about the city operations, about the digital operations in the near future in a slightly different way. Thank you very much for your time.
Dear attendees, please join us in a 1-minute poll of the session. Thank you, Mr. Lipinski, for another brilliant session. For our last expert session for the day, I would like to introduce our panel on customer happiness. This session will highlight the key factors that are driving change within cities, as well as trends that will likely to come into play, both of which governments across the globe will need to consider in order to deliver an exceptional digital citizen experience. We will discuss real-life examples of a government city's journey to offer improved and digital citizen-centric services. Lessons learned will also be presented here. Let me welcome Dr. Joseph Covatello, Chief Information Officer at the City of Santa Monica in California, and Mr. Sim Sukut, Chief Information Officer, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications of Estonia, and Mr. Mohammed Sir, Associate Partner and Digital Government and Public Sector Consulting Leader at EY, and finally Ms. Emily Yu, Technology Consultant at EY, who will be moderating this panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Yu, and I'm from the EY team and focus on working with our government and public sector clients, improving services that they offer to their stakeholders. There is a consistent theme of improving customer happiness when you look at the digital transformation journeys for leading cities and municipalities. They focus on reimagining services by adopting a citizen and design-centric approach, unified through omni-channel interfaces, with seamless fulfillment while offering personalized experiences and bundled services. Today, we have gathered a panel of experts from across the globe that will discuss and share thoughts on how digital transformation has affected customer happiness and the challenges that go along with it. So, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today. We are very lucky to be joined by Mohammed Sir, Associate Partner and Digital Government and Public Sector Consulting Leader, Dr. Joseph Covatello, Chief Innovation Officer from City of Santa Monica, California, and Sim Sukut, Chief Innovation Officer from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications from Estonia. Over to you, Sim. It would be great to get an introduction from you.
Thank you so much for having me. And well, as you said yourself, my name is Siim. I have been at the helm of digital things in Estonia for the last 10 so years, first working with our prime ministers in terms of kicking the transformation forward, and now as the government CIO or Chief Information Officer, concretely with our team, we lead and how our government makes the most use of digital tools and services. And as a country, we've been on this path for 20 years, so it's been quite a journey.
Great, thank you, Sim. And Dr. Joseph, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Joseph Covatello. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Santa Monica. The City of Santa Monica is in California. We have about 93,000 residents. We're a full-service city. We have everything that our much larger sister city, the City of Los Angeles, has next to us, including a federal airport. We have all utilities, police, fire. The only thing we don't have in the city is our own city hospital, but we're pretty complex for a small city of about 93,000. I joined the city about 4 years ago. Previous to that, I was in higher education. So I was in IT and higher education for about 20 years. And I came to the city because I wanted to have an impact on the customer experience. I knew the city of Santa Monica very well, and I would frequent it. And I thought that there were a lot of opportunities to improve the customer experience with digital technologies. And so, and I was really fortunate to get the job and have the ability to do that. And I'm looking forward to telling you about our journey.
That's great. Thank you so much, Joseph. And last but not least, Mohammed.
Thank you, Emily. It's great to be here, and hello to everyone. Mohammed Sir, as Emily has introduced me, working with EY, but before joining EY, I worked previously for the UK government. That's where I started my career as a career civil servant. worked under 3 different prime ministers, Margaret Thatcher, and then John Major and Tony Blair. Tony Blair is the period when we started really embrace digital and look at changing the way we operate government. And I'm passionate really about making a difference in people's lives, and I see citizen centricity as the core for governments to really embrace and drive their agenda around. So digital and citizen centricity becomes really the essence of what I do, and I'm passionate about it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with our first question, and I'm directing this to you first, Sim. In your experience, how has the increased focus on going digital impacted the customer/citizen experience in government services?
Well, very much so. But as I said in my introduction, in Estonia, our experience trespasses now 20 years. So my point being, in that time, and by the time we reach today, it's unimaginable that we will not be digital, right? So if we talk about how the customer experience has changed, but it's changed to the point where today, if you're not digital, you're not customer oriented. So whatever agency you go to, whatever department you go to, whatever country you are, people expect you to be digital. So 2021, as we speak now, I think this is really the fact of how you have to be if you want to be there at all. But secondly, if I go a bit deeper, what has digital allowed us to do, and what we have been really keen on ourselves in our agencies, is that it's not just that we somehow have a more convenient, better channel to reach our customers, but actually we can use digital to get rid of the need to interact with the government at all. We can make things proactive. And that's really fundamental, at least how we think here in Estonia, about sort of what the experience could be. The experience should be minimum. We should only basically bother people from the government side as much as we have to, keep it to the minimum we can. And we can automate many things away, we can be proactive in our service delivery, all the way to making services possibly invisible sometimes. So that's the sort of best experience we can deliver, and I think this is really what's the biggest thing happening today.
That's great, and of course, Estonia is such a benchmark for so many, cities and governments across the world. So it's really great. How about you, Mohammed? How has it increased the focus on going digital and impacted the customer and citizen experience?
First of all, let's context, citizen experience, why it's so important today. As all of us, we are using more and more digital channels in our, private life, with non-public services. Government obviously has had to be able to do the same, because the expectation is the same citizen, right? So we are looking for services in the same way. So governments who have really embraced digital have benefited not just by improving the experience, but also for better experience for their employees, because the more and more you use digital, it makes it easier for service delivery from an employee perspective. But also, it is a big impact on your operating costs. It's proven that it reduces down significantly your operating costs. And it looks at obviously the suppliers you're dealing with, or the vendors you're dealing with, or partners. Their experience also can be much better if you really holistically look at leveraging digital across government. If I zoom into citizen experience, then of course, you're looking at now the ability to access and get government services from your home, your chair, wherever you're sitting. So the access has become much easier. The convenience is your time. You decide when you want to get the service, not at a time which was, if physically had to go and there were certain time frames. And the reduced effort, the effort has come down. And as Sim said as well, it's allowed governments to break the silos, where it was looking at delivering services in a siloed way, to connecting them, to deliver them as part of maybe a life event, life moment. So it's much more connected, and the experience is much more convenient and unified. But most importantly, it has been able to give the future-looking governments much more of an edge on their experience, with the citizen satisfaction improving quite significantly.
That's great. Thank you, Sir, for that. Very insightful. How about we go to our next question now? And Joseph, I will ask you about this first. What are some of the examples of benefits organizations have recognized as a result of infusion of digital capabilities and digitized services into the customer journeys and end-to-end experience?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, I think the first thing that occurs to me is in the middle of a pandemic right now, we're able to continue to function and provide services to our citizens. The ability to do that digitally through the web, through applications, is something that, if you think about it, 5 years ago, I don't know if we would have been able to keep our governments running as well as we have. So just the ability to keep doing business. The other thing that I think is really, because we're in a crisis, we're able to achieve change quicker. And I inherited an organization that was very innovative in many ways. But one way it was not innovative was in the amount of effort that we required people to go through to get things like permits. I think Slim said it well. I mean, you want to interact with the government as little as possible, and you want to make it as easy as possible. And unfortunately, I don't think our government was there. And in general, I think, I was looking at the World Bank rankings of doing business throughout the world, and the United States does not come out so well there. It's because there's a lot of legacy, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And because of that, changing it and updating it and making it digital takes time, and there's resistance to it. And I think it's kind of been bureaucracy, make things simpler, make them easier, make them more agile, and more importantly, just continue to be able to do business and deliver services to people where they are when they need it, rather than requiring them to come and interact with the government and go to you. I think the idea is that if you can deliver things to people where they are, it's a huge benefit.
Definitely. And as you said, rightly said, definitely in the past, year or so going through this, it's been super important to have that. Sim, I'll ask you the same question. Any additional benefits organizations have realized?
Overall, I would say it comes down to two words: better delivery. So the benefits we have seen happen, basically all sort of aspects of that. For example, if we have shorter service cycles, basically things done faster and better, as we have just spoken here, then obviously this means that in a way agencies are serving more people as well, be it to have some social affairs or welfare provision happening, or be it, for example, licensing and permits that Joseph just mentioned. So my point being, if that's the goal of the organization, then obviously the more they can do it, the better they can be at it, the better, with the help of digital tools and channels. Or a second aspect of things, I mean, quite a few government organizations are in the business of ensuring compliance. Think about tax agencies or any inspections and stuff like that. That's a service as well. They can be much better targeted. Again, deliver much more sort of ensure compliance if they use digital tools for that. But what's also interesting in terms of compliance, and just my small point here, if you make it easy to follow rules and get red tape or bureaucracy done, people and entrepreneurs do it much more willing as well. This is what we have seen in terms of company bureaucracy or tax compliance or whatever like that. So again, making stuff easy and as sort of simple as possible, again, gives you better delivery and of results in the end. And I could go on with examples like that, but I think if I would only have to think one more aspect that perhaps matters most to governments at large and less at individual agency level, it's the engagement. So as I said in my very beginning, if you're not digital, you're not there. So if you're not digital, and by the way, if you're not good at digital, people in the street don't engage you as much. But governments are there for the reason. So we need to have some sort of positive relationship with our constituents, for that matter. And digital these days is a crucial, unavoidable element of that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that insight. Let's go to our third question, and Joseph, I'll ask you this. How does the infusion of digital capabilities change the experience of an organization's internal customers, so their employees, and how does it kind of change the experience on different levels, efficiency, productivity, speed?
Yeah. Well, I see that as probably the biggest challenge for somebody in the role. of a CIO or a chief innovation officer or a chief information officer. It's really about how do you get your internal staff to change. And it's simply because people are resistant to change for the most part. They know what they know and they do things a certain way. But in order to really make the change happen, you have to ask them to challenge what they do and to rethink their processes. I mean, if you think about it, in the technology world, you have technology, you have people, you have processes. The technology part, especially for the internal customers, is not really the issue. It's getting them to rethink their processes, to streamline them, to deliver them in a digital environment. And so, I look at my role as really focusing on the people element of my organization. Getting my business partners throughout the government to challenge the way they've done business and digitize them. That's really the biggest challenge, I think, because we're all busy and it's hard to rethink processes when you're doing your normal job, and it's hard to say to people it'll be better in the end, because when you're in the middle of it, it's not better for anyone. It takes time. You can't do it overnight. You can introduce a technology overnight, but getting people to change takes time, trust, willingness, learning, and a desire to do it. So I really spend most of my time doing exactly that, and having empathy to people for that, and realizing that I'm asking them to do something that they're not used to doing, but that it will ultimately have a benefit to our customers who are our citizens.
That's great, thank you. Sim, I have another question for you here. How have the organizations and the governments that you have worked with improved their customer experience through the application of emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence?
Well, in the end, emerging technologies are, tools among a bigger toolbox, right? But if I zoom in into AI, then I myself am very bullish on artificial intelligence, exactly for the reason you say. I mean, obviously, with the state of AI as it is today in the world, there's many ways we can be more effective as governments if we use as tools. And if I talked about before the benefits of better delivery, for example, then obviously faster service cycles, if we can service them, for example, simplest things with the help of chatbots, which is what many governments and agencies do around the world, that helps to make get people to get their problems solved faster, even just like Mohammed said, in the middle of the night or from a couch. Or a second case, a lot of proactive service delivery comes down to optimization and sort of figuring out where to target your service, which sort of customer particularly to reach out to. Again, different sort of AI tools allow us to learn from data and figure out ways how to be so much more targeted in how we do things. Whether it's to ensure compliance, whether it's to basically find someone in need before they might even have a need. But what I'm very bullish is for good reason, is that looking down the line, I fundamentally believe that we will see customer interaction and user interaction move to AI-based virtual assistants. If I look at sort of where the interfaces are going, it's not about just designing a better web, the next step, or whatever like that. I mean, how we will be interacting with agencies and consume the services, the user services, will be through voice, through our Series, Google Assistants, you name it, things in your fridge, car, your house, whatever. So, and that unlocks a complete new way for agencies also to engage and exactly proactively service the clients that we have. So I'm very optimistic about we are in perhaps at the beginning of this next great way where there's nothing more natural towards interaction than voice. And if we can unlock that to government interactions, we have a whole new game.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sim, for that. Our next question, Mohammed, I'll direct to you. What are some of the common difficulties and challenges organizations face when going through a digital transformation journey?
Well, a very broad question, and it depends which lens you look at this from. But let me apply a lens that I'm very keen about organizations looking through digital. And most organizations, and we can let Sim and also Joseph confirm, but in a lot of cases, we find organizations taking an approach of, I do something, how can I do this digitally? Now, whilst that is a great leap forward and an opportunity for organizations to move forward and deliver the benefits that can be leveraged from digital, it's actually falling short in what it could do. If we were to reimagine our operating model or our government for the digital era, we would take a different approach. And we may even question some fundamental things we do today, whether we even should do them. And we would question how we're doing some things and maybe even not do them. And I like to use a provocative example to bring this home. And that is, for me, passports have passed their sell-by date. Because if you think about what job does a passport do, it's in essence about confirming an identity of an individual, which country they come from, and whether that country people have right to enter a certain country. Today we're using the physical form, and we're moving towards using that physical form towards in a digital way wherever possible. But as we've seen in Estonia, there are good examples of where things like driving license is not made physically made available. It can be linked to your digital ID. So this is one lens which I think we are not seeing so significantly play out by governments around the world. And the second is they're taking a much more what I call technology-led approach or technology first-led approach versus a human-centric first or an experience first-led approach or a purpose first-led approach, which can make a profound difference to what happens and how you use technology like AI or other technologies, blockchain, IoT, etc. So that's fundamentally, I would say, a couple of things that we see as challenges when I engage with governments around the world. And finally is the capability within organizations to really embrace digital and know how do you operate as a leader, as a government, public sector leader within the digital era we are living in today, which is much more than just looking at how we deliver services digitally. It's about how do we engage with our citizenry, how do we communicate with them through different mechanisms than what we've been used to in the past, like how do we embrace social media space for the communication and even delivery of services. So those are some of the things which I would say, if we look from a different lens perspective, I've moved away from the traditional, how do we do digital transformation elements and stuff like that. Most of us are familiar with the challenges around governance and all those.
Thank you, sir. Joseph, how about you? Do you have any sight into the different difficulties and challenges for digital transformation journeys?
Well, what Mohammed said resonates with me, and I think it goes to a couple of areas that I think we could speak about. One is business process and change and solutions. And then the other area that I want to bring up, it would be privacy and confidentiality. That's kind of a separate area. So let me just say, building on what Mohammed said, you need to take the time to rethink what you're trying to deliver. So one of the things that we're in the process of doing is digitizing all of our myriad paper-based processes. And what I always challenge people about is, what use is a signature anymore? I mean, people always want to sign something because when we had paper, you had to sign it, and that's how you said it was authentic. But when you're logged into a system, an electronic system, and your identity is already proven, why do you need to sign anything? And this is a hard thing for people to change and to rethink, how do we do this differently? So to take the time to challenge people to say, yeah, we can do this electronically, but let's not just lift and shift it, as I would call it, just reproducing what you're doing in the analog world and the digital world. Let's rethink what we're trying to do. And I think the key to doing that is to have empathy with your with your customer, whether it's an internal staff member or whether it's a citizen or a constituent, to understand what are they trying to achieve and how do they go about it, and really use a design thinking type process to empathize with them, innovate, prototype, test it, and then continuously change it and look for how you can continue to make that process more efficient or deliver that solution more efficiently. Better delivery, like Sim said, is, I think, really the key to this. And empathy and a design thinking process is the way to do it. The only other thing I'll say about that is one of the things we're really very focused on in the city of Santa Monica is privacy and confidentiality. I mean, when you have digital systems and you're able to gather data on people and you have them in your systems and you know their identity, how do you protect it? How do you protect their privacy? And so it's one of the areas that we put a lot of controls around, we spend a lot of energy on. And that is also key to it, because I think that builds trust from your citizens and your constituents to want to work with you. I think trust is the key outcome of empathy. If you empathize with them and you understand them, then you can start to build trust. And I think trust is inherent with people feeling that you're protecting their privacy, the confidentiality of their data, and that you're also providing them with solutions.
Definitely. Thank you, Joseph. Obviously, we've referenced it a couple of times, for the past year, COVID-19 has kind of dominated, what we do, what we talk about, how we do things. So the next question, and Sim, I'll direct this to you first. Please tell us about your digital experience, how your digital experience changed during COVID-19. What did you do in light of the situation, and what was the impact?
Well, our case, my own personal case, is very much similar to what Joseph said for Santa Monica. Because the services have been there, then COVID-19 has not hit us in that sense as a public sector, not that much, at least not in Estonia. So everything kept on running, except a few things like driver's license tests. So you still have to show up for that, or you can't do it on a PlayStation somewhere. So, but otherwise, yeah, government kept on running, whether it's back office, front office, because all these things had been digital. So what we clearly saw in a way was that it gave yet another assurance that the digital path is the right one. It pays to be digital, essentially, as an organization, as a government. But secondly, we also saw and have tried to use it as an opportunity to pull a few things from a drawer where perhaps the time was not ready before, right? Even in Estonia here. So things like, making a strong push for remote visits to a doctor, because the health system was still very much based on physical, actual meetings and tests and everything happening. Now, as you just couldn't go to the doctor anymore because they were also busy with COVID. Overnight we pulled some old ideas, tried experimenting, and put it to work. So my point being that clearly we had to do some COVID-19 specific fixes and exactly push. It was a nice push further down the line that we had been on.
Very good point. Mohammed, I'll ask you the same question. How have you the digital experience kind of changed during COVID-19, and what was the impact?
Look, on a personal level, and I'll reflect on that from that perspective first. So, being in the consulting industry where you're traveling almost every week, sometimes twice, 3 times a week, with COVID, that all came to an end. And one of the big questions we had to answer was, how do we operate, and could we be able to operate in the way we were operating before, physically going, meeting with clients, and making proposals, pitching, etc., and delivering. And in this part of the world, it's been very, I would say, the requirement has been there that you physically are present. So that one big thing in our work environment changed overnight, and we had no choice. So all of us, the governments and us working together, had to find a model to operate. And which was quite interesting is that we did find a model, And even today, we are in that space where we haven't gone fully back. There's a kind of hybrid situation, and now and again travel gets postponed or banned. So what we found is that something that we didn't think before, it is possible. So we've been able to find a model where we can work continuously. So that's on a working perspective, I would say that's a big shift, a big change, going from traveling every week to physically delivering all of those things. The whole value chain from pitching to winning to delivering has been possible through a virtual mode. And then on a day-to-day basis myself, because we were not able to in Dubai for a period of time go out for grocery shopping, etc., the convenience that it brought by being able to use apps which were there before. It wasn't that they weren't there. Maybe some new ones came up, but home shopping was available. Home entertainment and socializing with your loved ones and your friends, etc., through a different means. So all of that is being possible. And I would say that what COVID has taught us is that you do not need to do a lot of things that you were doing before in physical form. You can come to a model where you have a balance between the physical and virtual space. So it really has, I think, put a spotlight on the possibilities of doing things differently.
Definitely agree with that. Thank you very much, Mohammed. And Joseph, to you, what about your take on this?
Well, ironically, I think it's accelerated our move towards the digital environment. And, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This has been devastating to our city. Our revenues were a tourist-based city, and tourism was not happening for a very long time. And for the first time in 120 years, the city of Santa Monica had to lay off a significant portion of our workforce. So about 35% of our staff were let go. Our budgets were cut dramatically. That's because we can't run a deficit, unlike our federal government. We also don't print money. So we couldn't just print money our way out of it. But ironically, what that did is everybody looked at IT and looked to me and said, how are we going to deliver all these services? We didn't stop 30% of what we were doing. So it actually gave us an opportunity to say, okay, we can be part of the solution. This is what I've been challenging the organization to do for a while. And people were on board because they said, we don't know how else we're going to be able to deliver these things during this time. There's a saying in US politics, don't waste a crisis, don't waste the opportunity that a crisis presents. And this is a crisis. And so it presents an opportunity. And as painful as all of that was, losing our staff, having to cut our budgets, it gave us the ability to become more like one of our aspirational places, which is Slim Estonia. I think it's amazing what Estonia does with delivering digital experiences. I always call it out as the place that I want to be more like. And we got a long way to get there until we get to be as forward-thinking as you. But I think this past 9 months has really, and to start to get to that more.
Okay, on to our last question. Mohammed, how about I'll ask you first. What is your future plan after COVID-19?
Interesting question. I think, I've been doing some contemplation about this. What does it mean? What does life look like beyond personally for myself, my family, and also what does it mean for governments? How can they really use this, as Joseph said, this crisis as an opportunity to really change the way we do things? On a personal level, I feel there is a hybrid model that we can go towards working and using that to the advantage of many of us, because it has an impact also on reducing carbon footprint. It gives more of a work-life balance to people who are traveling all the time. So I'm very much looking to finding that kind of balance where it is minimize the travel, but essentially we do it still to stay connected. For governments, I think this is a pivotal moment. We have an opportunity to really rethink and reimagine government. And my personal, you can say, perspective on this is that we need to start moving away from talking digital and talking about what I call a smart government, moving towards a different form of government, which is starting with looking at the operating model itself not just what does it do, but how does it operate, and how can you find a balance between the virtual and physical world for the benefit of the citizens, but also for the public sector servants, and also for the funders of public services, so that we can reduce the cost of operating as well.
That's great. Thank you, sir. Joseph, how about you? What's your plan after COVID-19?
Well, I think to continue to accelerate our digital transformation and to think about what the post-pandemic world looks like. I mean, I think one thing that this pandemic has shown is that we can all be very efficient working remotely, and that technologies can support people, large groups of people, continuing to be very productive. The question is, how does that affect what it means when you can come back and be physically present? I expect that we will continue in some kind of hybrid approach. And I also expect that we used to want people to come to City Hall and interact with us, right? We wanted people to come in and show us their plans and have an exchange with our city employees. We still want that, but I think we also want to provide people with the opportunity to do that remotely, safely. And so I don't think that's going away. And so I'm looking forward to creating whatever this new model is. And the final thing I'll say is I want to make it as low friction as possible. I mean, if you look at what Amazon has done in retail, it's a very low friction environment. I go to Amazon, I click on something, it gets delivered to me in a couple of days. And when people are used to that, when a good part of your life is as frictionless as that, I think people expect that from their government, and they should. And why can't we be more facilitating and easier to work with than we are? And that, I think, is the thing that we're going to look on accelerating after COVID.
That's great. Thank you, Joseph. And Sam, what's your future plan?
Well, in the interest of time, to be very brief, as I said before, our plans were not really stopped because of COVID. So, I mean, what we have been on the track in terms of making government invisible, becoming more AI powered as a government, I mean, all these things are continuing. But I mean, I want to just basically double what Joseph was saying, what many governments, and including a bit us, what we have learned in this awful pandemic is that how to be really quick with response and quick and even quicker with our delivery and innovation. So I'm very much seeing how to make some of that stick. A lot of what government CIOs do, what governments do, is essentially create the machinery of government. So we have now first-hand experience how the machinery can run in very fast ways, and to make that a daily thing is a core job for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Sim, for that. I just want to say thank you all to you for joining this panel. It's been so insightful to hear your views and kind of your experiences, on digital transformation and how it's affecting, that experience, citizen and customer experience. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to all our speakers in the panel discussion. We have come to the end of our forum, and I want to congratulate us all on all the learnings we achieved today through all the sessions. At Dubai Municipality and as a government entity, we value such events because of the amount of knowledge we can transfer and exchange in a short time. This is what inspires us to host such events. So before you go, I would like to invite you all to cast your vote on learnings of this forum. thank you all for being here today. It has been a great day, full of insights, and it would not have been possible without our great guests and participants. So thank you for taking the time to be here, and I look forward to joining you all once again soon.